And here we are. Let me get that turn that countdown off. I got so many buttons and palettes to turn off around here. Oh, man. How we doing?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Very good.
Absolutely. Terri and Chris from LumaFusion, Luma-Touch.com, but LumaFusion is the app almost everybody is interested in. So we got our first comments over here. Good afternoon. I thought Mr. Damaris was actor Benicio del Toro at first glance.
I can only wish.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is I do Final Cut TV and coffee and Final Cut TV, and we have a lot of people that are interested in LumaFusion. You know, let me just see if I can get that opacity turned up a little bit. There we go. So it shows up.
Yeah. Yeah, incidentally, we are too.
We have, I do that do you know that person, Genuine Article 71?
I've seen Genuine Article around, yes.
Okay,
I
okay.
don't know the person, but.
I don't know if you know that specifically. I get who it is, but you've probably seen them. Love that we now have speed ramping. I edited at a lounge the other day, and with no Wi-Fi, my purchase speed ramping kept giving out. Like it wasn't unlocked. It would only be, is it tied to Wi-Fi somehow?
It is not. And I've actually had one other user report that. So there's something that's going on for a few users where they've purchased it, but it's still trying to check. Generally, once we've downloaded the receipt from Apple that it's been purchased, it should just always be unlocked. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if for Genuine Article, I would contact support. We'll have you try a couple things to see if we can get that fixed. We'll figure it out one way or another, but it should not be tied to Wi-Fi in any way. And we've always been, as a mobile video editing app, we're all about being able to edit wherever you are, and so we certainly don't want to require that, and that wasn't the intention.
Yeah, exactly. So last time I talked to you specifically was at NAB last April, and I said then that I was going to get an iPad Pro for LumaFusion, and I did. I got the 13-inch, 1 terabyte SSD, and I love it. Absolutely love it. So
yeah, it's a nice machine.
It's a nice machine, but LumaFusion itself, I mean, I got the pencil, what was that pencil called? It's a Magic Pencil or the Pencil Pro or something. I got that with it. The latest generation, and I really, really like it. I was used to using it on my older iPad Air and then also on my phone, but boy, it's a whole other world on a 13-inch iPad Pro.
Oh yeah,
that makes a big difference.
There's enough space for real editing. Also, have you seen the display that's the non-glare? It's so hard to get used to just see no glare when you look at your iPad, but it's really cool.
Well, to me, it seems like I don't have, well, you're right. I do have a glare inside because of my overhead lights, and I have to angle the iPad. You're right. I was thinking it was for outside use, but I guess not. So it's like a matte finish?
Yeah, it's a matte finish. And yeah.
The weird thing is when I turned it on, I felt like I couldn't touch it somehow because I was so used to the glossy screen, and it felt like, ooh, should I touch that or not? But it's really cool.
So go ahead.
The other odd thing is that the edges are still glossy, and so that's a little weird. You get these little glossy parts right along the edges, and that's a little disconcerting. But the display itself is lovely. It's
here's my recommendation for people that have a glossy screen. This is an alcohol wipe for white, because your fingerprints are just all over that thing. So this is what you're supposed to use, what Apple recommends. 70% something isopropyl alcohol. So that's what you need is these things. I use it on my MacBook Pro too. When I took my MacBook Pro, because I take it when I travel because I need Ecamm Live, it doesn't run on the iPad. And when I took it out of my darker studio, took it out, I said, "My God, is this thing dirty?" It's just like you don't realize it. You take it out of your natural light, and then you got to clean the board, clean the screen. It was dusty and everything. So So let's talk about what's going on with LumaFusion.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
LumaFusion. Well, let's talk about 5.0 specifically. Let's talk about the things that are included in 5.0 first, the updates, and then we'll talk about the big ticket item.
Yeah, so in 5.0, we've included a lot of new free features in the update. Some of my favorites, are the new grids and guides that are in the preview. You can turn on multiple different size grids. You can turn on a horizon line, safe areas, all very easy to do in there, and it's a lot of fun to use. Some of the other additions, which off the top of my head now I suddenly can't remember, because we put in a lot, and it was a lot of time getting them all done. But
Well, we got faster export times.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a big one, yeah.
Absolutely. I think my favorite is the horizon line. I love that.
Yeah, the horizon line's really nice. Another thing is we included 2 new great packs of effects by a really good artist who did those, and so our transitions, excuse me. So there's some really nice transitions, and and we added a little more flexibility in the clip editor UI. You can now flip that side to side and adjust the size of any of the components in there, which really helps editors on different size devices get exactly the size and style of things they want to work with. So those are all really nice changes. Yeah. Yeah,
they are, absolutely. And 5.5.0 is a big update for the reasons you just mentioned. Faster export time is a great improvement. It may not be a big ticket item in most people's heads, but boy, when you use it on a day-to-day basis, it's gigantic. It really is. Any kind of a jump like that in performance is always welcome. Started shooting in 4K on my iPad Pro, 1 terabyte lost storage quick. It started using up 4 terabytes disk. I tell you, I have so many little hard drives around here. My favorite are the, which ones are those? The little tiny ones, and they're 4 terabytes. Here it is here. These are my favorites by far, and I use them I bought them for my iPhone originally. What are they? Crucial. This is a 4 terabyte SSD. And I have my LumaFusion project on here for my iPad Pro. It also works with the iPhone, and it also works, of course, with the Mac. 4 terabytes. Look at the size. It's like nothing. So I have 2 of these, and I have a bunch of Samsungs and everything. So one of another feature that LumaFusion had recently, it wasn't in 5.0, was the ability, if you have a project on an external SSD and you start up LumaFusion without the SSD, it'll give you a warning. Hey, this project was on the SSD. And then when you hook the SSD back in, it's automatically populated. Project's right there. That is really, really nice.
Yeah, it's nice. One thing that user mentioned is I guess he was getting, or they were getting lag when they use the external SSD drive. You might want to check on that, whether you're using the correct cable for that, and different drives will have different performance characteristics, with different iPads. So if it's one of the newer iPads with an M2 or M4 processor that supports Thunderbolt, then you're probably better off getting a drive that's specifically Thunderbolt compatible, and make sure you use the Thunderbolt cable that came with it. Otherwise, USB-C works on some of the earlier devices. If you're doing a lot of 4K off of a USB-C, you will start to lag when you're editing, off of those, but it shouldn't be particularly obvious. We work with external drives all the time, and it works really well. So I would check their setup on that. And yeah, other than that, if they keep having problems, again, contact support. Our support people are really good about, taking a look into it and having ideas for them to try. They've got a lot of experience with it. That's one thing about our support team, by the way, that I think is something important to mention is, our support team are both editors, and they edit all the time. So they really know what they're doing, and they have direct contact with engineers when they need to go, a step up. This is not like one of those big things where you go through automatic support somewhere that, has automatic answers. No, they know what they're doing. And if they don't know what they're doing, they immediately contact one of the engineers to say, hey, can you help us figure out what's going on here? And we work on it. And so I think that's one of one of the key features that people don't realize about our app is that, we have really good support, and it really helps, get things done. And a lot of the bigger companies, it's a little hard to get the support from them, on an app that's on the iPad. I've seen in the past, at least with, Apple has good products, but their support for some of their apps is not always, something you can find somebody to get in contact with.
Well, I don't even know who I would contact. Well, for my iPad, I mean, Apple Care, but that's not really, the iPad specific or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, good support in 2024 is such a big deal. I mean, just getting, like you said, being able to talk to real people is such a big deal. It's incredible. So that's great. And of course, LumaFusion has all the tutorials and stuff, and you're online all the time, and you have your own. There's a LumaFusion Facebook group. So I belong to that, and I, to be honest, I started when Final Cut for iPad came out, I started a Final Cut for iPad Facebook group, but I've changed it. Now it's video on the iPad, and it's both LumaFusion and Final Cut both, because I use LumaFusion. I haven't even tried Final Cut for iPad because of the subscription model. I'm just not really interested. Plus, I have LumaFusion. Plus, I have Final Cut on my MacBook Pro. So.
Exactly.
Oh, I just thought of making a tutorial. Another feature in 5.0 is this What's Happening panel. I think I might be frozen, but anyway, the What's Happening panel direct links to different playlists and tutorials and anything that we think would be helpful to an editor using LumaFusion. So just go into the settings and you'll see a What's Happening tab, and just go see our suggestions for what to watch to learn about new features and things that are going on.
So that just pops up, right? At least it does for me.
Yeah,
It
it'll
does
pop
at
up when you
first.
first start the app.
Okay.
Yeah. And then later, if you want to get it back, you just go into the settings and you see it in there. So.
Are you going to put new things in there if they come up? Yeah, that is
We'll have new things all the time.
that is really nice. Plus, the graphic for it is really nice. It's big icon, big graphics, not little teeny ones somewhere in the corner. So
One of the fun things about the way that was designed too is it does change based on what you have in the app. So for example, when you first go in now, it's going to tell you about speed ramping and advanced keyframing. If you buy speed ramping and enhanced keyframing, then that'll actually change to show you a tutorial on how to use it. And so it's sort of a smart what's happening to tell you what would be of interest to you based on what you have purchased in the app or what's coming up. And it allows us to give you news as things happen, new updates and things like that. So it's a new way that we're trying to help continue to build the community on LumaFusion and make sure people are in the know of what's going on.
Right. No, LumaFusion is a very friendly and very talented group of people. All the tutorials that I see all the time, and it's interesting because you have different people doing different tutorials. It's not not the same person every time. Like with me, for example, I'm the person on all my live streams, for better or worse. I don't have a crew, but you have different people with different skill sets, I should say, when they're editing and stuff.
Yeah, everyone on the team in Seattle anyway, creates videos. So in Seattle, we do design and support and QA. And in Salt Lake, they do all the development and engineering.
Okay.
And so, but over here, everyone on the team creates a video here and there for something. Some of us have more engaged with that process and some are just occasional, but we all like to contribute and we're all creative. We have a history in video and a history in video editing that we actually enjoy sharing, and we use it for testing as well. So if you're creating a video, there's no better way to test than to just create a video. And the more complex, the better. Then we can use those experiences to bring back information to engineering.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about some of the two big ticket items: advanced keyframing and speed ramping. Let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, would you work on that for a couple of months or?
Well, so here's the thing. So the way we did speed ramping, I really wanted and it needed to have an advanced keyframing model to make it cool. Like you need to be able to see the graph of how something is changing over time, and not only see the graph, but affect the graph and affect the ease of how fast something's going to speed up or slow down. But with that implementation, we also added the path, the curve of the path in there. So we have Bezier curves, and you can speed up or ease in or out of any keyframe and have complete control over that, all on a touch screen. So, and this was kind of nobody on touch has the interface that we have for that. It's extremely powerful for touch, unbelievably powerful for touch, but it's also way better than anything I saw on desktop when I was
Well,
looking,
I was
at
just-
research,
I was just going to say that. It's more
what's the best way to
sophisticated.
do this?
It's more sophisticated than Final Cut Pro's keyframing, which has been
It
a
is.
sore point for a while for me. I mean, that's just...
Yeah, one of the things we always try to do is find that balance between something that's easy to get into and easy to use, but still gives you all the power. And the enhanced keyframing for me was an interesting one because we went through probably 4 different variations of doing it. Some very traditional, some very way out there. And when we came to this one that we finalized on with this wonderful slider that allows you to do a hold, allows you to do an ease, allows you to do linear, and allows you to do a speed out of a keyframe, it just felt so right, and everybody went, "Oh yeah, this is it." And that's a lot of how we do things. It's back and forth. Some of that came from feedback, from NAB. We refined it from that, and so every step along the way, we continue to refine something until we feel, it. And that comes down to making those videos. Our team was making videos, with speed ramping. They're going, "Well, this just doesn't feel quite right. Can we do this?" And that keeps making changes. And so sometimes it takes a little longer for us to get something done. But when it's done, we feel really good about it. So now for 5.0, there was an additional thing that made things take a little longer. We had started a refactor of some internal code, the engineering team did that. It's one of those unfortunate things in software that when you start something 10 years ago, it's going to have some code that's pretty old. When we started this,
Right.
iPads didn't have nearly the power that they had now. And so you develop things with the technology that you have at the time. But as you move along and you want to do new things, sometimes that old technology will hold you back. And so we made a conscious decision to refactor a big portion of the internal code to make it easier going forward to make new features. And when you do that, however, it will create small problems, incompatibilities, and we have a lot of features in the app. And so it took a lot of time to test everything and retest everything and fix all of those small features. And so that's some of the things you don't see in a new version of the app, is that there's a lot of things done under the hood that will continue to make it easier to bring new features more quickly in the future. And I'm actually really happy about that. But unfortunately, it's one of the things users don't see. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of new stuff in there that you don't, that means nothing to a user.
If people only knew how long some things take. I mean, I know because I've talked to you since NAB and before that about, I always tease you, it's only been a couple of months, but it's usually a process of a year or longer.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
I
just-
mean, the
Go ahead.
design and the redesign does take some time because we could just copy someone else and yeah, maybe that would save us a few months of work. But honestly, I don't get why we would ever do that, because what we're trying to create is a new experience, new for touch and new for the industry. We want to rethink how things are done so that we are the most relevant in the best forward thinking for video editing. We don't want to just say, oh yeah, someone else did it that way, so we're just going to go ahead and do that. Because if that was the case, you can just go buy that other product.
Right.
So I think that design does take a bit of extra time here at Luma-Touch, because we are intent, at least I am, in doing our very best as designers, our very best as engineers, our very best as human beings. and our very best as creative people trying to do something new and innovative, not just make a buck. I mean, we could make a lot more money. You brought up subscriptions. Of course, this is the way everybody is making money. And this is just not us. We are doing this because we love to do it. We're expanding our own personal horizons when we build and design and redesign and rebuild. It's making our lives as creators of the software to be wonderful and joyful and lovely. So I just think I can't imagine doing it in a more rudimentary, okay, well, we got it out, so let's move on to the next thing, because I would think, anybody can do this, and let's just sell the company and move on, because
No,
that would
don't
be,
do that.
For me, there's no point. There's no point in me spending my time doing what's already been done. And that's I guess I'm a little bit heated on that debate right now, because it does we do take a little bit longer, but what we come out with is amazing. I'm just kind of like,
No, it is. It absolutely is. So we got a bunch of comments here. When LumaFusion was first developed, was the hybrid approach to the magnetic timeline built from scratch, or did Apple have tools that you were able to utilize in the software side?
And no, that part was entirely built from scratch. What Apple did provide that was helpful to us is the underlying media engine that handles decoding, and then we can render and encoding. So, and they do an incredibly good job at that. It's, extremely performant. We get new features like ProRes when it comes out. But from a UI standpoint, that's entirely our baby. And mostly that's Terri's design and, my implementation early on. And we love that, hybrid magnetic timeline. I think it's one of the things that truly makes LumaFusion unique and lets you edit the way you want to edit. So, yeah.
Well, it's the advanced magnetic timeline. Is that what you call it? Advanced or something?
It's an advanced, or enhanced. But it's
enhanced,
just that we've gone beyond.
Yeah.
The trick is that as always with Apple, they pick a very specific direction to go with something. With that magnetic timeline, and if you try to do anything different, it won't work. And that's the key to it. If you do it exactly the way they, envisioned for you, it can work really well. But then particularly with video editing, at some point you'll suddenly hit some limitation where you just wanted to do something else, but it won't let you do it. And that's where we decided we don't want that situation. We want it to be magnetic in the base case where it just does what you expect. And in that one case where, hey, I don't want that clip moving, I can disconnect that clip and leave it on the timeline where it is. It's that simple. It was just an idea to say, hey, we want a little more flexibility here. We want to have per track, volume control. We want to, be able to lock and hide, tracks, things like that. That just.
So here we got a little glitch in the matrix. Every once in a while, the internet goes, Phew. So the enhanced magnetic timeline. Things that aggravate me about the magnetic timeline is like you were talking about. Sometimes I want to lock the upper track. I want to lock it in place. The other thing is, in Final Cut, and I get this discussion all the time, markers are clip markers. They follow the clip around. They won't stay put in the sequence in the timeline, and that drives me nuts. So I use a title over top and put the markers in the title so it doesn't jump around and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ultimately, it would be the best to have clip markers and timeline markers.
Yes, exactly.
I think the challenge is on mobile, quite often, it might be easy to put a feature in the iPad, but then we think, well, our iPhone version is 1-to-1. Every feature in the iPad is in the iPhone. So sometimes there's a thing like, well, the best place for a button, like say our layout button on the timeline, and it controls both the layout for the main screen and also for the editors. And well, that may not be the best place for the button, but it literally is the only place we could put the button on an iPhone. So since the features are one-to-one, it really is a giant puzzle, which is partly what makes it so fun, because we're always like jumping through a hoop over here and then having to jump in a much smaller hoop over here. And yeah, it's really challenging, but it's fun.
No, I've always said that how do you get all this stuff from the iPad? I got a 13-inch iPad Pro on my iPhone 15 Pro Max. How do you do that? But you do it. Like you said, it's 100% feature compatibility. Everything's exactly different places, but it's all there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are tools, I believe, Chris, that you use for every different layout. So the iPhone, you can simulate it and see every different size that you can get. And without that, I think it would be impossible. But so it just takes a lot of testing. And we have automated testing, and then we have our testers in-house that are checking everything. And occasionally there's like, oh, this tooltip covers up this button, and then we have to go fix that, or this button is not on screen when it should be. So doing that testing process, just there's a lot of details that go into making an app so complex for an iPhone, especially.
Yeah, and I'm always impressed when I see people editing only iPhone, because we have a lot of users, including some of our users in-house, like Caroline, who does some of our videos. She often does it entirely on the iPhone, and that's amazing to me. It's I know it works, but at the same time, boy, it's a small amount of real estate. My eyes are a little older, so they don't work as well for that. But we give people the best of both worlds. So, yeah.
But the best thing about using the LumaFusion on the iPhone, especially when I'm mobile, like at the Creative Summit or NAB, I shoot it on the iPhone, no export. I don't have to export it and put it on a drive and take it to the iPad or my MacBook Pro. No, I shoot on here. All the media is right on here. And I got the 1 terabyte version, so I have enough room that I can do stuff. But it's amazingly efficient. LumaFusion on the iPhone is amazingly efficient. And I really like it, like I said, when I'm mobile, when I'm going out of the East Coast and going somewhere. I love that ability. Rather than used to be, I would shoot and then I'd export and take it into Final Cut or something else. And now I don't have to. Just shoot it right. It stays on the phone. And of course, Final Cut's not on the phone. It's amazing. I don't think they ever will be. I don't think it just doesn't seem like it'll fit. Not Final Cut Pro.
I mean, there's just not a lot. We're doing fine, but I can't imagine there would be much of an upside for a big company like Apple to put out a neat app on an iPhone. I wanted to mention, though, one interesting thing is I have a 10-year-old son, and most of his friends learned to video edit before they learned to use a mouse. Because they're using LumaFusion, because they see him doing it and they're like, wait a minute, I want to do that too. So yeah, it's fun to see kids being able to pick up LumaFusion and just edit within minutes. They're telling their own stories and doing effects and voiceover and making titles, and they make animations on Procreate and bring them into LumaFusion, and it's just amazing that they are using it for its intended purpose of telling their story. That's what they have something they want to say or something they want to see, and they can just use it because it doesn't impede their creativity.
So here's a question. Are you working with any local middle and high school schools to try to get students using LumaFusion? Well, you're on Chromebooks now, right?
Yeah.
And I know in the Seattle area, Terry's been dealing with it. Yes, I'll let you go. Go ahead, Terri.
Oh yeah, I have in the past personally gone to local schools to teach a 1-week course on video, which I just found very, very fun. But I currently I'm just in touch with some film festival people that also give summer school camps for kids and winter camps for kids. So I'm hoping that we can get them, because that was their comment, is like, the first day we have to teach all the kids how to use a mouse because they're that young. And they wanted to be able to just go right into the storytelling, because film festivals are about storytelling, not about using a mouse. But they had to
Right.
do that. They like the idea of LumaFusion just being able, like, they can skip a whole day of boringness and go straight for the storytelling.
And also this
Right. Yeah.
for
On
school
the
age
phone.
kids on the phone. They go, what? I can edit
Yeah.
video on a phone? Not only shoot, but I can edit it on a phone? That's got to be a
Yeah.
big thing for schools.
That is, and you mentioned, we are, LumaFusion is available on Android and Chromebooks, which opens a whole new world for a lot of schools who have those devices and focus on it, and a lot of people who, have Android devices and Chromebooks rather than iOS devices. And we're really excited about that. We're quickly bringing it, the Android and Chromebook version up to feature parity with, with the iOS version. It takes time because, it's a big process to get there.
Yes.
But we're already working on, the enhanced keyframing and speed ramping, and, and we expect those relatively soon. It's still, a little ways out, but we're really excited about how far along those are. And so people will see that sooner than they probably expected. And so we're getting to a point where I hope, within the next year, we'll get to a point where we're releasing, new features on both platforms at the same time. And we're excited about that as well.
We have a comment about a common thing people talk about, AI and machine learning. I know Procreate recently came out and stated they were not going to be using the AI route. What is your view with AI or machine learning as it relates to video creation?
Chris, I'll let you talk about machine learning, and then I'll take it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll let Terry get into the sort of philosophy of it. What we are doing is we're in some sense following, we are being careful about how we use AI. We are using machine learning for very specific capabilities. For example, our voice isolation is a machine learning based voice isolation, to remove noise from voice. We soon will be coming out with what's called a person keyer, where you can key out people in a scene. And, that's machine learning based as well, but that's all local, on device, private, sourced with media that, is not stolen from or scraped from the internet, things like that. And we're also, let Terry go on from there about what our philosophy is as far as creativity goes, and what machine learning should be related to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for what I've spent time thinking about AI over the last 6 months, and I have been on panels about AI at NAB and have done videos about our philosophy on AI. And what my feeling is that we in the industry are some of the most lucky people to be able to be creative and make a living. And so when you think about generative AI, there's two things that happen. One is the most wonderful part of creative is missing because you're just having a machine do it. So that part that brings you joy as a creator, you're just having, you're pressing a button or saying a word and it's done. And then, so for me, I'd be like, well, why are you in this industry? Because that is the joy of the industry, right?
Right.
Don't take it away.
Absolutely.
The second thing is, by doing that, you're creating an economy where no one else who really is enjoying that creative process will be able to make a living, right? You're kind of putting the whole system out of balance by having a machine do what humans are best at. And then the third thing is stories. They're how we, as a society, that's how everything starts. If you have an idea about a product, it starts with a story. You say, I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if? And that's your story that you create to move forward in life. Or if you know how things change in society, what's right and wrong, that's all changed by a story. Maybe it's a news story, maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a book. But these stories are how we evolve as a society. So I'm appalled that we would think it would be a good idea to write a book with AI, or to write a script with AI, or to edit a video with AI. And people might say, well, editing a video is just, it's just this mundane task. And I'll tell you what, every video I make, there's a point, especially on the good ones, there's a point where I say, oh my gosh, this is the stupidest thing I've ever created. It's so ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how this is going to happen. I've written the script and I've shot it and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. And then I get into the edit and I'm like, what can I do with the edit that tells the rest of the story, that tells the part I couldn't write with words, that describes my feelings with the way I edit. And so for me, editing is part of that storytelling that I will never, ever allow my company or Chris and I's company to use generative AI to do. Because when the day that happens, I'm out of here. Like, this is not what I came for. I'm not going to do it. And I agree completely with Procreate on that. That's not why we got here. And that's not what's going to make us stay. What's going to make us stay in this business is the passion for creation and creativity and storytelling and editing and all these things. Like, why be here if you want AI to do your work for you? Go do some other job, be an accountant or something. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude. But
No, listen, I besides the video aspect of it, I relate exactly what you're saying to this right here.
Absolutely.
There's no way. People that are making music nowadays, they have teams. They have a dozen people, and they have computers writing. So, I watched the Beatles, a 6-hour documentary. It was chilling to watch that, and how Paul McCartney brought in Long and Winding Road and Get Back just as a little seed, and how it expanded. When you touch a guitar and you touch the fretboard and you have an amplifier hooked up to it, that feeling is just irreplaceable. Irreplaceable. That's the same with video editing, like you're talking about, the storytelling aspect of it.
There's times when you have to tune your guitar, and maybe that's not your favorite thing. Well, to me, okay, there's probably, I'm not a guitarist, but I'm going to say there's not a lot of creativity in tuning because it's a very technical aspect of it. Right. So that would be a great place if you could have AI tune your guitar, but not do the art.
Well, we do have tuners now that make it easier because you can visually see, but you're still doing the mechanical tuning. That's
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the key to all of this, is that there is a fine line between what is a creative part of video editing and what isn't, and that's something we're watching out for, because that's the slippery slope that people get into, is they say, for one person, color grading may just be a chore, but for the other person, that is their creative art, and if we start having the AI do it for us, then we aren't going to have that creative person able to do that, as Terri said, as a career anymore. So we just have to be really cautious about where we're going and not jump into AI, without taking a look at what are the ramifications going to be. And Terri's been on a number of panels where I feel like the people there are just so gung-ho on AI without looking at what are those repercussions. We're not going to stop AI, but I think we need to be thoughtful about it for sure. And we as a company for sure will put a line in the sand of what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And there's another.
AI is. I don't mean to say all AI is bad. I think the world needs some help here with certain things,
right?
Disease and climate, whatever it is. Let's use it for that, but don't misappropriate it in an industry that is all about human creativity.
Right. Well, for a perfect example is voice isolation. That perfect, for either whether that's machine learning or AI, that's something it really, really benefits video editing, is making the voice clearer. So
yeah, that's something that's not we don't feel is particularly creative. Now, people who've done it in the past where they've had to do it by hand, that's an amazing creative process, but I'm sure most people would agree they'd be happy not to have to do that. So
right, exactly. So there's two things that are specific to the advanced keyframing and speed ramping. There's two different layers to that, two different interfaces, right? That changes from one to the other.
There's actually there's two different things we're talking about. One is the keyframing, which you can use on an object on the screen for position, size, rotation, whatever.
Right.
Or you can use it for color or any effect, really. And the other is the easing with which it goes from one to the other. Is it going to get there fast or slow, or is it going to go fast and then slow, or slow and then fast, whatever, or hold? And those two features can be used for speed. The easing between two different speeds, or the easing between two different color corrections, or the easing between. But when you get to size and position, you also have the path that it's going. That's how we have these different interfaces that let you see speed or any keyframing in different ways. For instance, say you've moved a clip a long distance over the screen. You might, and maybe you have 5 keyframes. You might want to see the velocity between each keyframe so that your clip isn't moving one speed here and then a faster speed and then a slower. You want a similar velocity even though it's moving around the screen. So we have a velocity graph for that, and then we have I guess it's called the position graph or something. Ease graph, which shows you, like, even if you made a minute little change, it would show you the easing between that minute little change. So we've really put a lot of thought into all the different things that you want to do when you're moving around the screen or changing speeds or adjusting an effect. And all the tools are right there, and you can touch them on screen. It's just amazing.
One thing is the enhanced keyframing works for every parameter in the clip editors, including audio parameters. So if you're adjusting volume, you can now ease that over time, or if you're doing panning, you can do that. So any parameter, whether it's a video effect, an audio parameter, position, rotation, scale, opacity, all of those can be keyframed with the enhanced keyframing to do new easing capabilities. And then those same capabilities can be used for adjusting speed over time as well.
I did not know that. I never really thought about using it for audio. I just, I'm used to the motion path. But there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. Number one, you have those little hash marks in the slider that say, don't go below this point. That's excellent. That's excellent. So people don't have any kind of, so it has the least you can go so it doesn't create choppy slow motion. That's really, really cool. The other thing that I like is long press to nudge keyframes. I love the nudge. You can go one keyframe, or is it 5 or 10? I forget which.
Or you can just pick it up and drag it. I don't know if most people know that, but you can just pick up the keyframe with a long press and move it along if you like.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, if you get it close, then you could use the nudge to get the exact frame that you want. I just realized, it's funny because there's so many small components to this new feature that, I even forget about. One of the other components is called the Zoom Navigator. That allows you to basically zoom in and out of your preview so that you can see the entire workspace, so that when you're moving an object off screen to on screen, you can see it while it's off screen. Or if you're, animating in a particular effect, you can zoom in on a few pixels and see exactly how that's going to affect a certain region of your image. And that's another part of the whole enhanced keyframing and speed ramping package.
Right. So there's a comment, what about editing via transcription? So that's what I call text-based editing. That's good for making a rough cut.
Right.
But that's
something we certainly have on our feature list and are considering. I think there's still a lot to consider there. But yeah, that's a process that for a lot of users saves time and could be useful. And so, that's not something that's on our immediate roadmap, but we do have that as part of a complete range of features that includes subtitling, captions, and everything else.
Yes.
Part of that.
Yeah, they definitely go together, because I use Final Cut Pro sometimes. They don't have anything built in. And I'm kind of surprised that they don't after all this time. But maybe it's coming this year. Whatever, I don't know. But doing a rough cut, I can take like this video, for example. If I make it into an audio podcast, I take it into DaVinci Resolve, let them transcribe it, and I can just visually select text and drop it into the timeline. Whole paragraphs I can delete. So visually, it's just a rough cut. It's a rough cut, just putting it in. So I really like that feature.
I mean, I think it's a nice feature depending on the style of your editing. If you're editing something that is very content based, like what we're doing right now, it's perfect. For my more, I don't know, visually creative editing, or maybe I'm doing a documentary or some sort of stylized video editing. Often it's in those untexted moments that I can tell that the look on someone's face is going to go perfectly into the next scene, or the way they lilt with their voice implies something that text doesn't say. So I think it just really depends on your style of editing, whether that would be a feature that would be beneficial for you.
Well, it's mostly for long form. Like, for example, you wouldn't use it on a music video, but when you have myself, a lot of times 1 hour, 2 hour video or audio that I want to cut down to 30 minutes, it's just good to get those blocks in place. And you can instead of listening to, if I'm in Logic, which I'd use for audio, instead of listening to everything, I can read. And I don't want this paragraph in. That's going to cut it out, and it's dropped the good portions in. But I still got to go back and refine everything. Got to refine all the edits.
Yeah, transcription is definitely an area where I think we will, use machine learning. Actually, one of the comments that popped by that I thought was interesting was someone who wanted to train AI based on the media on their server, and I think that is a really good use. One of the areas where I can see AI being good is when you. And Apple gives us a lot of tools to do that, and so it's something we're certainly investigating, is to be able to train it only on your media and be able to use it for useful things like finding scenes. For example, beyond transcription, find the scene where the red ball flies through the through
right.
the scene. Those kind of things we think are going to be
absolutely
useful in the future.
Absolutely.
And again, it's those things where it's based on your own media, not sending your media up to the cloud. That's one of the things that people have to really watch out for, is that, so many companies are doing their AI in the cloud, and as soon as you upload them, most of them, now some of them like Adobe are, going to be, I think, reasonably careful with your media, but you never know about that. That's been one of those. But other companies aren't going to be so ethical. And, once your media is up there, they could use it for anything. They can use it for their own training, and then somebody can create a new video based on media that you captured, and that's something I think we want to watch out for going forward.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the number of videos that are scraped on YouTube, like every video is auto captioned, and all of that is scraped. So it just becomes like a recycling of of ideas, and I think that's just really dangerous for human thinking, right?
Absolutely. So
one of the things about that, I want to talk about that zooming into the Zoom Navigator that we have in 5.0 again, because I really enjoyed using that for the latest Curious Editor I did, because there's a beginning scene where I wanted my arms to be getting undressed and dressed really quickly while my face was speaking at regular time. And so I actually zoomed way into the scene and just use keyframing to line up my eyes and my nose. But I wouldn't have been able to do that without being able to zoom in really close. And it just made the whole process really fun and easy to go through. And be able to map myself to myself.
No, exactly. I know exactly what you mean. I've done some transitions where I lined up two things, and it just, you just nudge them over a little bit, make sure the eyes line up and everything. I had a film that was just shown at the American Film Institute Theater in Silver Spring, Maryland. We had our second showing in July. The first showing was a year prior in April, and we're probably going to have a third showing. And I did that. One of the things in that video, in that movie, I did that because we had a guy from the 1950s, and this band covered their song, and I synced up both versions, so one blended into the other, exactly what you're talking about. So,
No.
so
It's fun doing.
what else is coming out this year? Anything you want to talk about?
Well, we have a lot of new features. We're in the process right now of prioritizing that, but I think people will be really happy with some of the new stuff that's coming in. It'll be coming at a pretty good pace that people will be excited by. Like I said, we had this big refactor, and and enhanced keyframing and speed ramping were a really big feature, and so they took a little longer. And everything always takes longer than you expect. But we already have some things in the pipeline that we're excited that'll be coming out fairly soon. And so I don't want to give them away at this point because, again, we're prioritizing them as we speak. But I think in the next few months, towards the end of the year, you will see a lot of things coming out from us, and it'll be a lot of fun.
So you're not taking a vacation after all this work on 5.0. You got something else coming out in 2024.
There's always more to do. Yeah.
Well, so Terri, have you played with Final Cut on the iPad at all? Have you fired that up?
I mean, a little bit, yeah. I honestly, I don't have a lot of time, and I do obviously all my editing on LumaFusion, but I of course have to look at out there. Yeah.
Well, I was just curious because I know you worked with Apple in the past. I mean, LumaFusion, you guys got 2 awards 2 years in a row before this version came out. So obviously Apple likes what you're doing.
I think working with Apple is maybe an overstatement because they just basically either bless you with their presence or they don't.
Okay.
But I think they did like what we are doing, and I think they still do. Obviously, they have Final Cut that they need to babysit now. But we still have a good relationship with them, and I think we're still in conversation. So.
Yeah, and we still bring something different to the table. I mean, you look at the features we're adding now that Final Cut doesn't have, and Final Cut has some nice new features that we don't have. Their new live multicam will appeal to users. So I think the nice thing is there's room for all of these editors out there.
Yes.
There's Final Cut, there's DaVinci, there's us. At the lower end, there's CapCut, which has become popular, and they all have neat features and capabilities, but they're all useful for different things. And I think. Personally, I believe, LumaFusion hits the sweet spot of giving you professional and easy to use features, of course. But, and that is our sweet spot. And we do unique things that nobody else does, multiple LUTs, all these things, just little features that we always think about carefully. And I think we implement well. And I think that'll always be something that is unique to us. And I think, Apple appreciates that as well. We continue to have conversations with Apple about things. But yeah, like Terri said, it's a little different now that they have their own app out there, but that's part of the game.
So one of the things, they have this live multicam that for whatever reason only works on the iPad.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it work on the MacBook Pro? Are they separating these two apps going in different directions? Because it seems like they are, because that's a feature absolutely can work on the MacBook Pro. I'm doing it right now. I've been doing it for years with Ecamm Live.
Yeah, the thing is I think, you have 2 different teams probably working between these. And Final Cut has a large legacy code base, that's very different than what's going to be on the iPad. They have plugins, they have all these other things. And I think it's hard to keep those things, in coordination. I don't think they want to make the iPad version available to run on the Mac because that would create a lot of confusion.
That definitely would.
Yeah. So So I think it's just a practical matter that's hard to do. Maybe we'll see the live, multicam in an upcoming, desktop version. I have no idea, but it just depends on what. I think Apple saw that as a feature that fits well with the iPad, that would fit well in a live studio. I don't know. I'm just guessing what their thought process was. But I think they've always seen the desktop and mobile as very different, even though they're bringing some of those, a lot of the same capabilities to both. So
right.
I think they all a little separate.
So we have a comment. Do you ever see LumaFusion having a dedicated desktop version, or will you always stay the iPad lane? Let me answer that partly. If they have a touchscreen MacBook Pro, perhaps, right? Perhaps.
Yeah.
But
we keep adding new features to the desktop version. The iPad version runs on desktop, and we are continually adding new capabilities to make it a better desktop experience. And that's not entirely easy to do. But we have a good percentage of users who use it on the desktop, and so it's not unimportant to us. It's something that we will continue to focus on, and I think we can continue to make that even better as we go. I don't think we'll ever do a separate version, honestly. We had started a process for that in the past, and I don't think that would make sense to us. But continually evolving and improving what we do have on the desktop is something we'll certainly do.
Right. Because Mac OS and iPad OS are different creatures. They're just completely different. I mean, sometimes it's frustrating. iPad OS is frustrating when you compare it to Mac OS.
Right.
So
now, interestingly, I do think we can see what Apple is doing in some of their developer APIs for windowing and views, and interestingly enough, the Vision Pro is bringing some cohesion between both of them. They're doing some things there on APIs that I think will bring some even more overlap than we have now. And we're certainly looking at that, for ways we can make a better experience on all platforms we run on. And so we'll continue to evolve, to make that happen as well. And it'll be interesting to see what Apple does over the next couple of years that way.
Well, just over the next couple of months.
We'll see what happens next month, but
a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from this Monday. They changed it to Monday, I think September the 9th. And I love my iPhone 15 Pro Max for a lot of reasons. And I'm keeping this. And I'm also going to get the iPhone 16 Pro Max when it comes out, if there's any improvement to the video specs. Because I don't care about the phone. I don't use my phone that much. I use it as a video camera. So, and I love the 15 because of the USB-C port. That's one of the main reasons.
Yeah,
now, curious.
That's one of the big workflows that's, changed people doing ProRes capture to an external drive on their phone, and then being able to plug it in and edit right in LumaFusion is a really nice workflow.
So we talked about the live multicam, and they have the app for the phone. Apple has the Final Cut camera for the phone, and it can record Apple ProRes log, but there is no LUT support. Zero LUT support. You can't import a LUT. You can't preview with a LUT. You can't burn a LUT in their camera app.
Right.
But Blackmagic can.
Yeah, I mean they've always been about monitoring devices that that have LUTs, and so that was a focus for them. I would not be surprised to see LUTs coming in a future update of that app.
I would too if they didn't have it. Yeah, that's one. Yeah. Why do Apple log if you can't at least preview with a LUT?
Right.
That
is strange, but my guess is that was one of those decisions to get an app out, with the base features working well and add more features later. So
I'm a big fan of Apple log. I don't know if you've shot in it at all, but it's like night and day different between shooting with just regular. Because the phones have a tendency to over-sharpen and over-saturate. But because it looks good. It looks good to our eyes. But working with log, and I use a Blackmagic cam because I can look at it with a log, with a LUT. Different LUTs. You can choose different LUTs. You can put not only their LUTs, but not only Apple LUTs, but other third-party LUTs. You can import them and watch them. Or you can burn it in. Or you can, whatever you want to do with it. So...
Yeah, that's the other nice thing. LumaFusion, we include 2 separate LUTs for, delogging, Apple log, and you can bring in your own. And so, a lot of flexibility there as well for quickly previewing in our timeline.
Absolutely. And I know you spent a lot of time on the multicam feature. I love the multicam in LumaFusion. I really, really do. I think that's one of my favorite features is you have the ability, you have a separate audio track that doesn't get switched. If you're doing a music video, for example. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I just really like that a lot.
Yeah, and then being able to map different cameras' audio to other cameras. Did you know you can do that? So you can have like 3 cameras and say, I want camera 1 and camera 2 to have audio, or some from a pocket recorder or whatever. So,
but it's been a complaint with Final Cut on the Mac for years. When you cut their multicam, it cuts the audio, whether you're just doing video or not. It cuts the audio every time you make a cut. And that's so aggravating. I mean, what I'll do is I'll just pull the audio track down below the multicam. But you cannot not cut the audio in Final Cut when you're cutting just video. It cuts the audio too. And it's just like, what? Whatever.
yeah.
So things have been, how 5.0, I imagine, has been a big, made you busy again.
Yeah, it keeps us busy, but it's exciting. Users are very excited by it, and of course, whenever you do new release, there's things to find and bugs to fix. So we'll have a update very soon with a few small things. It's been actually gone very smoothly, which I'm really happy about, and we're excited by the response to it.
Absolutely. So 5.0, it just came out in August, right? Just like a week ago or so?
Yeah, a week ago today. Yeah.
Yeah, I kept seeing people saying, you said it's going to be out this summer. And I said, summer's until September the 21st or the 20th, whatever. Come on, it's still summertime around here. Well, I'm not talking about that summer. I'm talking about summer for the,
Okay. Well,
yeah, trust me, we would have loved to have had it earlier this summer, but again, everything takes time, and you release something when it's right, and that's
No, absolutely. So Terri, when are you going to make Chris do some editing?
I always love seeing Chris edits.
Yeah, my edits are a sight to behold, I'm sure. I'm good at making the tool, not using it. That's for sure.
So we just had a comment. I was going to talk about this. LumaFusion on the Apple Vision Pro. Have you looked into that at all?
Yeah, no, it runs on there. You can enable any iPad app to run on the Vision Pro, and so it works on there, and it has a nice big space for the screen, but it's not optimized in any way for the Vision Pro experience. So we've had a couple of users try it out, and some actually we have a percentage of users who are using it on there. It's a really small number, but my impression is that the experience is a little bit clunky, so it's not going to be that lovely experience that you'd hope for, the Matrix style feel of experience. But we're keeping an eye on the Vision Pro. I don't think it's not something we're working on immediately, but it's something for the future we really want to take advantage of. I do see it as pretty exciting. I think it could be a really fun work experience, being able to edit in a space all around you. But it's not quite there for us to be able to do that yet. So we're letting Apple let that bake a little longer before we.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things. People keep saying, it's it reminds them of the Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report, but it's not. He didn't wear any goggles. He didn't wear any goggles. He's just there. It's not the same, but it is very, very interesting. And I'm obviously the future is going to be a lighter version of it, a cheaper version of it, whatever. So, but that'll be interesting because once again, Apple has teamed up with Blackmagic, and Blackmagic's making that 180-degree immersive camera. As far as I know, they're the only ones making that camera with Apple's blessing with working with it, which is different than just the spatial video. It's like 180-degree field of view, like you're actually going through something. And once again, Blackmagic, their camera has been, it never ceases to amaze me that Apple and Blackmagic, they work together on some things, and then other things, like there's no support for Blackmagic RAW in Final Cut, and no support for ProRes RAW in DaVinci Resolve, which people have been asking about.
Yeah, whenever you have format wars, those are quite religious. So yeah.
So our friend Eric Emmerich. So we're never really happy. Which features are coming next?
Well,
Thanks for that question, Eric.
Yeah. So Eric, feel free to contact support and let them know what your features that you'd want are. We do actually prioritize our features based on two things. One is how often it's asked for, but also, the technical ability and time it's going to take to do it. Other factors, so, that's frankly why, speed ramping would have been 5 years ago if we had been able to do it at that time in a reasonable way, and so it took time to get to where it was. We have things on the horizon, and I, today I can't mention what those are, but I think you will be happy with them. They're real big advancements to, what you can do in LumaFusion, but keep telling us what you want. Those things do bubble up to the top, and, when enough people tell us they want this, our support people, every week we have a meeting to talk about, what is coming up, what people are asking for, as well as what bugs are. And during those, our support people say, hey, got another person who asked for this, and we'll say, okay,
there you go.
We'll put it a little closer up, and so, yeah, we listen to our users and that combined with, what we can do and, what our business is and everything else, we'll make those decisions and get those done.
Can I give you a couple of things I'd like to see?
Absolutely.
So I love that nudging of keyframes in the key. I would like to do that to clips on the timeline and to edit points. Because I nudge rather than physically dragging. And the other thing is I like to be able to pull a background video below the main timeline. So it's in the background. Because right now I have background. I use background things all the time. So that's my couple little ones.
That's an interesting thought. Being able to maybe even drag a track from above down below so that you could reorder that track. Yeah,
right now I got to put the main timeline up one level and put the background in the main timeline area. Right.
In fact, so when I edit, I often have a background too with the screen over the background or whatever. And I build my main story on the main track and then move it up. And then I use the static background as because it's magnetic, I trim that to move other things around and drag it around, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. And when I do a voiceover, I'll edit the voiceover on the main track and get all the timing out, then put that down in level. And when you put a video clip over that, then it kind of locks up to that, or, it links to that. And then you can, move things around with your voiceover groups. If you
right.
Want.
So our friend Eric.
Ways I've decided to use it.
So how many tracks are we up to now? More is always better? Not always, but usually.
We are 6 video tracks and 6 audio tracks. That's something on the horizon. So, that will be improving. So,
But what about multicam? How many in multicam?
Well, multicam is 6. Yeah, is 6 also. It's 6 tracks of multicam angles plus the primary audio track as well.
So that's a lot. That's a lot of tracks.
For a lot of uses, it's enough, but we know people can never have enough tracks, and we get that.
Well, it's also got to be effective. It can't bog the iPad system down. And here's another.
Okay.
Go ahead, Terry. I'm sorry.
There's always limitations to. We are talking about an iPad and an iPhone here, so it's not like whether we want to do something. Usually it's kind of like, okay, is it possible to make a good experience out of this? Sometimes it's not possible with what we can get out of the box, but we can choose to say, okay, we're going to spend 6 months development time to create our own foundation for this thing. And if that thing is worth it, we would do that. But sometimes it's like, well, nobody's really going to appreciate that thing enough that it's going to matter. You know, it's not worth 6 months of our time or a year
exactly.
of our time to do this thing. Yeah. So it's a pretty complicated decision how you decide what goes in and what goes out.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, it's a waiting game because we can see, you know, there may not be foundations for this today, but in a year from now, we're almost 100% certain that there will be. So do we spend a year duplicating what we know is coming, or do we just wait it out and do something more on the feature level, you know, until then? So.
Yep. You can never figure Apple out. I'll give you a perfect example. This is the first time they put out an M4 chip on the iPad before the Mac this year. Yeah. It was like, what? You can't figure them out. I mean, it's like, okay, I got an M4 here and I got an M1 on my MacBook Pro. I'm 3 generations behind. This is one of the features I'm sure you've gotten requests for. Can we get a draw feature? That's very nice on, you know, I've seen that.
You know what?
Me every week, in fact.
So yeah. So we have a giant list of feature requests that I started in 2013. You know, and I think that's in the top 20.
Is that right?
It's just like, yeah, I mean, I think it was one of the first 20 things I wrote down. Wouldn't it be cool to do this? But there's, you know, I think that LumaFusion has matured to this place where we can now think about, wouldn't it be cool to do this, rather than what are the actual functions you need to tell a really good story and manage media and do it efficiently and, you know, make it. So there's just so many things, and that obviously that is one I want.
Right. Now, one other thing, there's many other things, but this is another thing. What happened with plugins on the iPad? I think that was talked about, but it hasn't happened. I mean, Apple hasn't released the architecture, or what heck's going on there?
Apple has no architecture for video plugins, only for audio plugins. And we do support, you know, third-party audio plugins, and those work nicely in the app. As far as video plugins, Apple has no support. Now, we are working with, you know, we've already included CoreMelt's lock and load for stabilization. And we're working with them on some other things that might bring some of the features people are really wanting in a more general sense. But we have to do that where we integrate that directly in the app because there's no plugins for it. I would love for Apple to have video plugins so that we could have a more general architecture where plugins could work across, you know, us and DaVinci and Final Cut would be certainly a dream. But we haven't seen any hint of that from Apple in any of the APIs, you know, coming up. So I wouldn't expect to see that soon.
But you don't think they're going to develop it for Final Cut for the iPad at some point?
I think it's possible. I don't think it's probably not their highest priority. I don't know, you know.
Okay.
I mean, that I could see happening maybe a year from now, but it's not something I see happening, you know, in the immediate future. So we'll have to wait. But, you know, like you said, you can never figure out Apple. It could come.
No, you can't. You can't.
Yeah, so
you just can't.
It's like this is a great example of one of those things. Well, we want that, so how much development time do we have to spend to do that over maybe some other features that people want? And in that case, I think we've kind of come to the conclusion there's a benefit to creating something with a core mount.
Yeah. Oh, Roger's great. Roger's great. Yeah. The thing I always tell people, I have probably over 1,000 plugins on Final Cut. I'm not going to rebuy them for my iPad. You know, I'll buy certain ones I'll buy for the iPad, for LumaFusion or whatever, if they ever come out. But I'm not going to rebuy all those thousands of plugins that I've used in Final Cut. So that's not going to happen.
Unless the plugin people decide that they want to make more money and then they do an iPad version, you know, you never know.
Well, I think they will. But so if Apple doesn't have the API available yet, once they release it, there's going to be a delay, right? Because people can't work on the plugins in advance.
Yeah, no, it's once they really there'll be a delay before it's available. Now, if they make the plugin architecture similar to what they've done on the desktop, then it should be a relatively easy process
Okay.
to. But I don't know if they can, honestly. It's going to have to be
Right.
somewhat different, just because the architectures are so much different from a software standpoint. Performance-wise and processor-wise, that's not a big difference. But the software, the operating systems are very different.
Right. Okay. Is there anything else?
I think we're really excited about what's coming up, and we think customers will be too.
Well, I guess I could ask you, are you going to IBC?
Oh, no. No, I'm not going to IBC. I'm going to the Creative Summit in November.
Oh, November.
Oh, right.
Okay.
November the 13th through the
Okay.
15th. November the 13th through the
Ooh.
15th. Yeah. No, I'm not going overseas right now, especially. It just seems like too much craziness going on. But are you going to IBC?
I'm not.
No.
No.
I've been to England a half dozen times in my life, and I've been to Paris and some places. But when I was younger, I liked flying a lot better than I do now. Especially that, we got some friends from Australia that come over to the Creative Summit every year. And it's like a 19-hour flight, some kind of a catching planes, 19-hour trip. Oh,
I mean, I would go to the Creative Summit. That's, just a couple hours for me. That would be fun to meet up there.
oh yeah. Well, you should. Because you were there in 2019, right? Is that when it was?
Yeah,
so.
I think that was the last time before the pandemic, and then we just didn't do it.
They've had one in person last year. This year they're back at the Juniper Hotel. Last year they weren't at the Juniper, and it was like a 1 mile difference between the hotel and where the sessions were. So you had to get that Uber thing going on or whatever. But they're back at the Juniper Hotel this year, so that's good because the Juniper's like perfect. It's another comment before we leave here. Has there ever been a feature you wanted to add but found it was just too darn hard?
Yeah, there are. I don't know if I can think of a specific one right now.
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, it's not too hard, but there's lots of things that are just hard. Like, I could see LumaFusion turning into a whole compositor because it has just a great platform for that. But it's going to be a lot of work to do that. Like we explored that. I'll let Chris talk about it because maybe I'm going in a bad place with it.
The thing is often a feature will feel too hard up front. Multicam felt too hard to me. It was going to be such a big piece of work, and it ended up taking a long time to do. But what usually happens is something seems too hard right now, and then a year later, you've thought about it multiple ways, new technologies have come out, and it's no longer too hard. And so almost every feature we've looked at has been a little that way. I mean, honestly, when we were, there's a lot of features like LUTs originally, way back, early on, I had no idea how to do a LUT, and how that was processed. And then after doing some research, found out how, that there was a filter that Apple provided that would allow us to, process, LUTs, and we just had to do the conversion. And so at every step of the way, there's a lot of features that will feel too hard to do, when you first look at them. And then with enough time, they don't. Yeah. So.
Right. And also with designing something for touch, like the keyframing, honestly, it's so much easier if you can have a mouse and right click on a little tiny dot and get a menu, I mean, that's an easy design. I'm going to right click and get a menu. But that is not what you do on an iPad and an iPhone. So it just
doesn't the Magic Pencil have a clickability now?
It does.
But it doesn't work
on
with iPhone. Yeah.
Oh, on an iPhone, of course.
You can't rely on these things. So, you have to have this design that works with this, and that's just wow. It's like it blows your mind sometimes. So,
yeah, you're right. It's amazing that you can't use an Apple Pencil on an iPhone. I mean,
I've heard that comment.
Exactly where I want it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised to see that in the future. Maybe.
No, I agree. I agree. People say, though, they've been telling me for years that Apple's never going to have a touch touchscreen MacBook Pro. I said, they've already got one. They've been working on it for years over in Cupertino, just haven't released it yet for whatever reason. Cost is not really the issue anymore. I mean, the screens aren't that much, can't be that much more. So
It might.
For them, I think it is going to be about, they'll only release it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Terry.
Oh, no. Okay, go ahead. It's all right.
Yeah, I was just going to say they would
I
only
was
release it when the experience is right. You know, that's the key. to
Yeah. And also, like, there is a point when you're cannibalizing your own products, you know, like they have the iPad, they have this giant iPad Pro that's a beautiful touchscreen that is growing into something that has a better file system. And I don't know if they would ever want to cannibalize a whole category of their products for that.
I think as long as you stay in the Apple ecosystem, Apple doesn't really care if they cannibalize themselves. Whether you buy a MacBook Pro or an iPad, it's like as long as you stay within Apple, buy something from Apple.
That might be that's true. They might just say, hey, it's still us.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's why people talk about merging iPad OS and Mac OS, and Apple's saying, no, why would we do that? We have two separate product categories, and they're similar, but they're not, you know, it's different, the touch thing and the iPad. I mean, I like my MacBook Pro. I like it for doing a lot of things, email and stuff, and then I have my iPad over here for LumaFusion. And what else do I just LumaFusion and reading books and stuff at nighttime. I really like that because I don't take my MacBook Pro to bed with me.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to always keep those separate because, you know, the MacBook Pro is a desktop operating system, and a desktop operating system gives you an immense amount of flexibility, you know, to get things in and out in different ways that they're trying to control, but they're not controlling as much. You know, the iPad started from day one of having a very locked down operating system, and little by little they're opening it up, you know, to a degree, but they're never going to open it up the same way, you know, they have on the desktop. And so it'll always be a different experience, which in some ways is really good because it's a more protected experience. You're not going to have to worry about, viruses coming on and things like that, and slowing down the. Though Apple does a good job, you know, I've never had a problem with a Mac slowing down the way I do on, you know, Windows, for example. But still, the Mac has a much more open architecture that is, you know, at least susceptible to more problems than the iPad. And so they are a different experience.
Right. So here's our final comment. Thank you for all your continued efforts in making this app great. Absolutely. I know you hear from the LumaFusion community all the time, but I want to say, you know, from a user standpoint, thank you for making such a great product. Thank you for having a great community. Thank you for your tutorials. Thank you for putting out those features that are coming later in 2024, whatever they may be. It's great.
We appreciate you all more than you can know, and we talk and think about our customers constantly. I mean, not talk about them in a bad way, but, you know, we talk about in a nice way, what we can do and what are they wanting and how we can help, and what our role is in their creative process. So we appreciate all of our customers.
Do you have a cutoff from older hardware at this point for LumaFusion, like too far back for iPads?
Yeah, it's anything that runs iOS 17, which I believe.
Okay.
I don't remember which iPad. It goes way back, you know, but there are some devices that got cut off, last year. Yeah.
Rather than hold things back, you have to cut things off so you can keep on.
But I still test on an iPad 8th generation, you know, which is a pretty old device, and it still runs well on there. And so, yeah, it's a pretty good range of hardware.
Very good. Anything else before we let you all get back to work? We want those features, those new features.
Thank you so much for having us on, Richard.
It's always great to have you on. I'm always glad to catch up. And thank you for LumaFusion 5.0, just came out like a week ago. And the advanced keyframing and speed ramping, that's the big ticket item. And thank you for not being subscription.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you for protecting our privacy. Because I know you do that as well.
Oh yeah.
I looked at the CapCut EULA. Is it 27 or 47 pages? Okay. I'm not signing that. I got rid of CapCut.
I know.
All my devices, I don't have it anywhere. Bunch of nonsense.
Their EULA really does concern me. It says bizarre things like if you use that it can access it's so vague that it could mean anything, and that's the problem. It says it
Right.
could access not only the media you're using in the app, but all your media that's on your device or is accessible by your device, and all these weird things that I'm like, I don't know if they mean that, but it could mean that, and that's
Right.
what scares me about it. Also, your health data. Like, why do they need your
What?
health data for video editing? It's in there.
I didn't know that. You told me
Yeah.
at NAB that they access your contacts. No, you're not getting access to my contacts. I'm not sign off on that. But when you sign that 27 or I have the PDF I downloaded, 27 or it might be more than 27 page EULA. For what reason? It's just complete nonsense. Nobody reads those things.
Nobody does, but I think we should all start reading those. And you know, all those emails that say, "Oh, we've updated our privacy policy," and you go, "Oh, goody, they must have done something good for me." And click
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah,
No, I would
exactly.
start clicking, wait a minute, I'm going to read this and see what I really am agreeing to, because you've already feel like you've made a contract with this company.
Yes.
And all they have to do is send an email to say they've changed the contract, and now you're giving away data. Because with AI, that is what's going to start happening more and more and more. Is just your thinking and your media and your everything is not really your own anymore. And
Right.
but you do have a choice. You have a choice not to use products that do that to you.
Exactly. And LumaFusion does not.
No,
Does not.
you do not collect any
And will
personal
not.
information.
There you go. That's a good point to end on. I thank you so much, Chris and Terry. And we'll talk to you again, either offline or we see you in person at NAB or the Creative Summit, whichever you're going to attend.
Yeah. I'm going to see about the Creative Summit. I hope to see you there.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Talk to you later. Bye.